Today we'll be talking about how to access your MySQL on a MySQL Workbench using AWS RDS to create your database instance. So what do you need today? It's that you need to have your AWS account. We'll be using the RDS service. It's a managed service. And to show how you can use your database instance, we'll be using MySQL Workbench as an example. I have also provided a link where you can go to this link and download the Workbench. So what is AWS RDS? AWS RDS is a managed service provided by AWS. You are able to deploy various types of different databases which we can go through today. We'll be going through today on the AWS RDS service. Most importantly, you will get 12 months worth of T2 micro database instance upon creation of the AWS account. So that means if let's say you have already created an AWS account in, let's say, 2 months time, then only you started to use the service, well, at least you still have the next 10 months worth of this RDS small instance for you to use. So let's go into the AWS website. Go to the Amazon RDS service. So in this case, let's create our own database. Okay, let's choose the standard create. Okay, so like what I mentioned previously is that RDS is a managed service. There are a variety of engines that you can select from. So the most standard one in this case is the one that we'll be going through today, MySQL. MySQL is a relational database similar to MariaDB, Postgres, Oracle, and Microsoft SQL. So all these are just different types of database from different providers. Amazon Aurora is one that was developed by AWS. So in this case, today we are choosing the MySQL Community Edition. There are a variety of different versions that what we have right now. So today we will be starting with 8.0.23. Okay, because today we are trying just to utilize the free tier, let's just select the free tier option. Okay, dev, test, and production normally means that it's of a higher, so-called instance with a higher performance rate. So later we can go through that to show us an example what's the difference between the three. So okay, please take a piece of pen and paper and remember that you have to save this. Okay, maybe not pen and paper, notepad is fine. Please remember that this is the DB instance of the naming of how do we know that this instance is for this free tier. So let's just take it to the default database-1. Please take note about the master username and password that you need. You will require this when you're accessing it through Workbench. So let me key in my password. Okay. So like what we have mentioned just now about the free tier and the development, testing, and production is that you can select a variety of different services. So if let's say I were to select production, you will notice that you have a variety of different instances for you to choose from. However, if we select free tier, because it's free, you only have one particular option to choose from. But I mean, if it's for the sake of testing how to use MySQL, this is what you can do. Okay, definitely. So every instance technically is just like having a computer with a service for a database. This database has to reside on a particular hardware on the computer, or in this case a virtual computer. So we will be allocating a hard disk to it. In this case, it's called a general purpose SSD with a storage of 20 gigabytes. So if let's say during the event where you finish using this 20 GB bytes, sorry, not gigabytes, it will allow you to auto scale. You can even click on the info to see what does this mean. You can learn more from here. So there's also a maximum threshold of how many GB bytes that you wanted to allocate to. So in this case, because today we are just explaining about the Workbench, we won't be going too much into the virtual private cloud. This is during the event where let's say you wanted to have your own application and you wanted to secure your system, then using the virtual private cloud to create your own one would be a good choice. So because today we are just trying to show the capabilities of RDS, we will not change the VPC of this database. Similarly, for subnet, we'll just keep it as default. Okay, this is something very important for you to make sure that this database instance that is in the cloud, that is publicly accessible, you need to select yes. So this means that as long as it's a service that is not within your virtual private cloud, so in this case, let's say your computer is in Singapore, whereas this so-called virtual machine instance is not in your home. When you allow public access, it means that you can now access your database from somewhere other than the virtual private cloud. So in this case, a computer at your home is considered public access. You require public access. So since we are not really changing much of the default security groups, let's just keep it as default for now. We might need to configure this later. Let's try with just the default one. So in this case, you have to choose one availability zone. So depending which region your account is in, so in this case today my region is in Singapore, so you can see there's AP Southeast 1. Depending on the region, you normally should have at least 2 to 3 availability zones to choose from. So in this case, what does availability zone mean is that, let's say in Singapore there are 3 data centers, and it corresponds to 1A, 1B and 1C. During the event where one database goes down, and if your database is there and you did not do any particular backup, then you might lose your database information. So since today we are just talking about how to do development, so let's just choose one. It won't affect too much. So in this case, to let you know what is this additional configuration, so every computer itself, for it to talk to the world, it would require a port. So in this case, the default port that normally MySQL uses is 3306. If security is of concern and you don't want people to guess your port, then what need to do is to change this port number. Okay, so for today's case, because we are trying to use WorkBench, let's just use the password authentication, which it is also required. If you choose some other options, you might not be able to connect it through WorkBench, or you have to configure your WorkBench accordingly. So is there any additional configuration that we want to set? Okay, so this is like basically when you activate a database instance, doesn't mean that you have activate a database. It just means that it has prepared a computer for you. So in this case, let's just call test database. So let's see whether this one will be created later. So all these are basically just you are able to enable some automated backup. This is some of the services that is provided by AWS. If you chose not to do automated backups, you can just untick this option. So what it does is that the backup retention period is that it will automatically backup up to 7 days, and after 7 days it will remove. Do you want to have any backup window? So let's just keep all this to the basics for now. Okay, so this is what it's trying to tell you. If let's say during the event that, like what we have mentioned just now, Amazon RDS is able to provide you with 12 months of free service upon creation of the account. Each calendar month, the free tier will allow you to use AWS RDS resources as listed below. So in this case, 750 hours basically just means that every single hour you turn on and you have some time to spare. So if let's say you are able to design your database in a way that you can turn on off at will, then that's something similar to a serverless setting. But in this case, because AWS wanted people to use more of their service, so they have provided you some basic usage. Then you just need to create the database. So now you notice that it's creating the database. You notice that I do have one previous setting before, so now it's already in available mode. So what you will be noticing is the status on the right hand side. We have just created database one, now it's at the creating stage, and whereas the one that I'm already in use is called available. During the event that there's any error, you'll see that this thing turned red. So let's refresh. Okay, I'll pause this video because this database creation will take some time, possibly a few minutes like what was being suggested. Let's just wait until this is done. Okay, let's go into MySQL Workbench, the one that you have installed after you have downloaded. So let's create a connection name. So in this case, let's create something like this connection. So what this thing is doing is you are trying to connect a connection from your computer to the virtual instance that was created on AWS. So what we can see here is that you go into your database RDS, databases, then select database 1, copy this endpoint and paste it inside the host name. Okay, keep the port the same. If let's say during the event that you have changed the security of the port on your virtual instance machine provided by AWS, you have to change it here also. Okay, now key in your username, the master username that was shown on the website just now. And just press test connection. So you'll notice that the successful connection has been made. Let's press OK. Now you will see that there will be a card here to show that this is the username that you are logging in as. Now you can connect. And remember that we have set up a default database, a schema. This is here. You'll notice that it has been created already. So then you can continue on with whatever development that you want to try out MySQL with by creating tables, inserting data. That I will leave for a separate video. Thanks again for today. If you do like this video, do like and subscribe. It will help out a lot for me. Yep, I think that's all. Thank you.